Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory and got a twofer for you here today, and those are the custom cans mods of the HiFiMan HE400se and the Edition XS. Again, these are mods done by UK-based independent headphone modding company known as Custom Cans. So these are sold from the UK, but they do ship all over the world. Shipping rates and times can vary a little bit, and I will let their website handle the details on there for you. But the base units here are the HE400se mod as configured here, goes for roughly 114 British pounds, which at the time of this filming, the conversion rate to US dollars there makes it about 142 US dollars. Likewise, this one goes for about 320 British pounds, which at the current exchange rate translates to somewhere in the 405 to 410 US dollar range, right in there, right? Just a ballpark. And I want to say that this is at the time of this filming, which is early February 2025 when I do this. And so those exchange rates can fluctuate. So those are going to be ballpark prices in there that will vary a little bit in time there. But these were sent to me directly from Custom Cans, and they asked me to be brutally honest in my evaluations of them. And of course, I am always that anyway, but it is always refreshing when a company just straight up says to do that. So that's what I'm going to do here. And I think they can rest easy because I think these are pretty solid products. And I'm going to tell you why right after shameless self-promotion.
Hello. I'm one of the reasons that Wave Theory can't spend all of his money on audio gear. He wants you to know that your support is vital for keeping the channel running. So if you enjoy Wave Theory's bussin' review riz and no-cap review style and want to encourage him to stay in the basement so I don't have to listen to his dad jokes as much, like the video and subscribe to the channel. You can also send him a donation on PayPal or sign up for the Patreon. Links are in the description. Now on to the review.
A little bit more on pricing on these units here, that you have a couple of options. One, you do not have to buy the whole headphone pre-modded from Custom Cans, although you certainly can. And the prices that I quoted to you in the intro there were reflective of the fact that you can buy the entire headphone. But there are options. Each one of these comes with their own custom-made grill on the back that is, specific to each model here. And they call these their super grills. And you can buy these prefab super grills and install them yourself. And I believe these are reversible mods at that. For 35 British pounds, which again, current exchange rates, that is around 42 to 43 US dollars, somewhere in that range there, if you want there. Now, Jason over at Custom Cans also informed me that they will sell you, I think it's the SLT file, or is it SRT? I don't know. I'm not a 3D printer, but they will sell you the files where you can 3D print these grills on your own for about 10 pounds, I believe he said. I don't know what the exchange rate is on that, and we will have to Google that one. But I did not see that option to buy the files for 3D printing on their website, like I saw for the grills and the headbands, which we'll talk about, and also that they have some cables that they will offer. But I imagine that if you send them an email asking them about those files, they will probably send them to you there. So Jason, if you're watching, either put that option up on your website, make it clearer because I couldn't find it regularly or easily anyway, or just be explicit that they just need to email you on that one. Okay, and we'll do a closer up look here about these new grills and how they compare to the original units and all of that. And of course, we will get into sound and all of those things as the review progresses here. Last thing, you see that there is a headband here that kind of creates sort of a faux suspension strap headband system on there. That is like a 4 British pound option there if you go that way. And I think it does help with comfort to put those on there. I did have one small issue with the headband, which I will talk about here as the review unfolds, but I did find that they did noticeably improve comfort over the standard kind of cheap HiFiMan headband that is on there already. Okay, Quick note on specs and all of that. Like, these are still planar magnetic headphones because they're based on HiFiMans. They are still open back, they're still full size and all of that kind of stuff. The drivability of these headphones really is about the same as the original HE400se and Edition XS models. Because it's the same driver and they really haven't changed the pads at all, and I'm not aware of them having put any additional material between the driver and the pad. Basically, they changed the grill on the back, is my understanding here. There's really not a whole lot of change in sensitivity, and there's not a change in driver impedance or anything like that. So if you want to know how well these headphones drive and what kind of amplifiers you need them and can you use them with portables and all of that kind of stuff, see my reviews of these unmodded units, the original units, the HE400se, the Edition XS, and I will put links to those down in the description below. Long story short on that one though, is that both the 400se and the XS are just a little bit more, like, they're kind of middling efficiency, middling in terms of ease of drive. They are not super power hungry, but they definitely require a little bit more power than, say, most portable amplifiers or dongle DACs are going to give you. There will be some portable amps and dongle DACs that can probably handle them okay, but they definitely are more comfortable with more powerful desktop amplifiers. And when I say more powerful desktop amplifiers, I just mean because most of those desktop amps have more power than mobile and transportable devices. All right, so, and just given the fact that they're planar and open back already, I don't think you're really going to want to use these on the go or moving around a bunch, so just plan to have just a little bit more power than most dongle DACs will have on hand to drive these, just like with the original units. All right, with that, I think we'll switch up views here and I will give you a tour, show you the new grills that are on here, and then also show you how the build compares to the original units. Then we'll come back on the other side of that. We'll talk about their sound, and then of course there will be some detailed comparisons with how these units fit in with HiFiMan's unmodded line, and then if there are any other relevant comparisons to similarly priced headphones from other makers, we'll get into that a little bit as well. All right, here we go. All right, let's talk build real quick of these. We'll start with the 400se mod, and for context, here is the original, and so you can see the difference in the grill material. Like, we just have simple, like, perforated metal grill on the original there, and then we have this nice, like, look at what they did here. We've got all kinds of, like, this honeycomb pattern on here with these vertical rods in there of different length in there. So, I mean, it looks cool, and it's definitely different. And really, that's the principal change, because I'm not aware that they put any different pads on these or changed anything on the inside. They didn't change the cabling or anything of that nature. The only other thing, and again, you buy this as an add-on, is this headband right here, which really does improve comfort. And the only thing that I'll say about this headband here, I think it was this side, yeah, is that it's just stuck on here with adhesive, right? And when I first got this, I'm pretty sure it was this unit and this thing right here, half of this had come off, right? And you can, like, I mean, you can see it's adhesive down in there. Come on, camera, focus, okay? Half of this had come off and I had to re-stick it on there, but you know, that was several weeks ago now, and it has stayed stuck on ever since. But the comfort advantage that this headband here has, as simple and as cheap as it is over the single bar headphone here on both of the headphones, is really remarkable. And this is not all that expensive. What was this, like £4 or something for that? I would really recommend springing for that £4 extra right there to get that additional comfort. And it's easy to install on your own and stays stuck there pretty well on there as well. Okay, so that's the difference in the build between those two. Let me grab the XS and its mod. All right, once again, for context, here is the original XS. You see that we have, like, I think HiFiMan called this their window shade or something like that. Anyway, just horizontal bars across the back here on the grill work, like so. And then, of course, whoops, sorry, bumped the camera there. This single bar headband thing like that, okay, and so forth. So what did Custom Cans do? They did something pretty cool. We still have, like, horizontal slats here, but they, like, vary in thickness in their depth. And I want to say, no, I guess maybe not. They vary in thickness in their depth there. And then we have this other area here where we have a different pattern with this, like, arc here and all that. So they are definitely doing something to do tuning of the sound on that. You also see that the Super Grill sticks off, okay, it extends off the back of the cup, okay, like so, whereas the original XS grill there is basically flush mounted on the back there. I think the custom can, yeah, it is a little bit heavier, as the 400se mod was too. So I think that makes it doubly true that you want to get one of these headband straps in there to improve the comfort on that. But again, the grill is mostly what they've done, because as far as I know, the pads are the same, so then the cup swivel and all of that is also the same, and it also uses the same cabling. Now about that cable. Both of these cans come with the standard HiFiMan stock cable that comes with the HE400se and the Edition XS, where you have this right angle 3.5 millimeter single-ended connector into a 6.35 millimeter adapter, and then you have the dual TRS here at the headphone end, and this cable sucks. Okay, it's not the best made, and it injects a treble peak. You know what? I know a lot of people are going to call me nuts, but when the thing is sharp and sibilant and unlistenable in the treble with this cable, and then you swap out cables and it immediately gets better, yeah, I could hear it in a blind test. Come at me. All right? So I would strongly recommend using something from like Audiophile Ninja or a Heart cable, or Custom Cans also has some reasonably priced cable options in there too that I didn't get to hear with these, but I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that they did something better than HiFiMan stock cable, and I would definitely advise getting something like that. Okay, that's really a lot of the build here and all that. Like it's the Super Grills that are the big options here. And again, you can buy them separately and install them in what I believe is a reversible mod on your own if you want, and you can go back and forth to your heart's content. But again, particularly because of the added weight of these grills, I would get the headband strap as an option here. All right, so that's the build. Let's cut to me back on camera and talk about sound. All right, as we transition towards sound on these, let me list my test gear a little bit. For mobile / transportable devices, just to kind of check power output, I used iBasio DX260 DAP and my Cord Hugo 2 mated to its 2Go streamer in there. All of the music files I would listen to, I'm an all digital music listener here. They would have been lossless FLAC or high-resolution FLAC files or DSD files, either played locally through Roon, or in the case of FLAC files, could have also been streamed from Qobuz, again through Roon. Roon endpoints would have included that 2Go streamer that I just mentioned, Sonor Ultra Rendu or FIO SR11 streamer in there. The most common signal chain that I use to evaluate these are just kind of a mid-fi, middle-of-the-road signal chain these days with the Gishelli J2S DAC, which used a 12-volt Swagman LPS. It has Burson V7 Vivid op amps in it, and that was connected mostly to either a Cord 2Go streamer and 2U DDC or to a FIO SR11 streamer in there as a Roon endpoint. And then the downstream amplifiers from that would have been a Lake People G111 Mark II or an Aoun S17 Pro. These also got some time on my really high-end rigs. That would have been a Berkeley Alpha Series 2 DAC or a Lampezator Baltic 3 DAC, both feeding an LTA Z10E amplifier, and they also got some time on the live Harmony stack of the Harmony DAC and the Harmony HP2A amplifier in there as well, just to see how these would do on some high-end gear in there as well. All right. What did I find here? Who are these headphones? Like, what changes from the original sound on these? Now, HiFiMan very much has a house sound to it, which is mostly neutral, though I think some people might perceive it as just a little bit V-shaped slightly, with a little bit of warmth in there, some brightness. But a lot of complaints that are out there about the HiFiMan sound is that it's too sharp and sibilant in the treble, and that the mid-range is sucked out a bit. There's not quite enough presence to vocals and that sort of thing, because HiFiMan typically starts their ear gain climb about an octave later than the Harman curve specifies and where a lot of other headphone makers start there. So there's just a little less energy, particularly around 2 kilohertz. So HiFiMan is also kind of one of those test case brands out there as to whether or not you're one of those that needs 2 kilohertz presence for timbre, you prefer that, or whether you prefer that pulled back a little bit because you prefer a little bit bigger soundstage. The biggest difference between the custom cans sound here with these Super Grill mods and the HiFiMan house sound is that there is more mid-range presence. Okay, so that ear gain climb that we talk about starts more closer to where the Harman target or diffuse field targets and that sort of thing typically have it, where it really starts to climb like around 1.8 or 2 kilohertz. It really starts to go up there. All right, so what happens here is that they're still mostly a neutral headphone, but there is just a little bit more mid presence here. To my ears, I am mid-range sensitive. I find them to be a little bit mid-forward, and I think that that additional mid-range presence here is a bit too much. These sound shouty, honky, and hollow to me more often than I would like, and that's typically not an issue that I have with the HiFiMan house sound. Okay, but that doesn't mean that these aren't good, right? There are a lot of strengths here, which we'll get to, particularly when we get into the comparisons and all of that. But my kind of 1,000-foot view of the sound signatures of both of these units here is mostly take the HiFiMan house sound, chill the treble out just a little bit, make it just a little bit more even, and then bring that 2 kilohertz range of the mids up a little bit and more forward. So it's the HiFiMan house sound with more vocal presence. Now there are some trade-offs there. I did find that like the bass extension wasn't quite as strong as other HiFiMans, including the units that these two came from. That doesn't mean the bass extension is poor, it just doesn't dig quite as deep with quite the oomph that the originals had here. I think they also sacrificed just a little bit of dynamics to get here too. So while these have good dynamics, good attack and decay timing, and some good impact and slam and all of that on the leading edges of tones and everything, they're just not quite as impactful as, particularly in the case of the Edition XS here, not quite as impactful as an unmodded original Edition XS or from the HiFiMan sound generally. So that is one of the trade-offs. To get the vocals in there, it does seem that it traded a little bit of bass extension and a little bit of dynamic impact and energy to the sound in there as well. Now, it doesn't mean that it sounds flat or dull or lifeless. Definitely not, just not quite as strong in the dynamics as the original house sound is. All right, let's talk about that treble in a little bit more detail. I think the treble here is a little bit smoother. It is less peaky. It doesn't quite have like the raggedness to it. So sibilance, which can plague both of the original units, particularly the HE400se, has been smoothed out a lot. And so they are less sharp and they are less fatiguing over longer, the mods anyway are less sharp and they are less fatiguing over longer listening periods than the originals are in there as well. So that's a strength too. However, in the case of the Edition XS, even though it's less sibilant, less sharp, and less fatiguing as a result, the weight of the treble tone wasn't quite as full or fleshed out to me. So it's just a little bit more shishy as opposed to shushy in its sound if you have like rapid fire cymbal hits and all of that. That's not necessarily a problem. I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that that is a difference that my ears picked out a little bit in there. So that's just, again, one of those trade-offs in there. Now, did they trade off soundstage size? Because one of the things about the HiFiMan house sound, particularly these egg-shaped units like this, is that they are big. Like, they soundstage large. They have this kind of epic and grandiose kind of presentation to them a lot of the times in there. And did they trade this here? A little bit. I don't think the soundstage size changes much, honestly. Okay, the bounds of the soundstage on both of these units sound pretty close to me as they do to their originals, like, or just their source material there. What I did notice is that within the soundstage, the spatial presentation is a little bit different. That added 2 kilohertz energy there. Again, this is not confirmed scientifically because no one's really done blind testing on this, but it's kind of just one of these adages within our hobby that if you reduce the 2 kilohertz range a little bit, the 2 kilohertz energy, you get a bigger soundstage, or at least a more coherent imaging and separation across the soundstage. And that to me is the difference here. The more forward vocals and the more forward instrument sounds through that 2 kilohertz range with the mods here makes the imaging and the separation at first, initially present as just a little bit less coherent and a little bit less clear and more in my face, right? So whereas the originals would kind of do this like horseshoe shaped or half semicircular shaped soundstage presentation in front of me, the mods are doing more of a straight line across, okay, laterally right there. And that did initially to me make them feel a little bit more closed in. So even though they had all of the width of the originals here, they sounded a little bit closer to me, and again more linear laterally in their spatial presentation. However, with listening, what I found is that all of the imaging and the separation and the depth and the layering and all of that are still there, and they are probably better than the originals. But they just initially, it just sounded a little bit more closed in and close to me on that. So did they sacrifice soundstage or spatial presentation to give you that additional like tonal presence in that 2 kilohertz range? Yes and no. The actual soundstage size didn't really change. The shape, at least to my ears, the perceived shape of the sound staging did change a little bit from semicircular in front of me to more linear, okay, in front of me. And that did take some getting used to when I would switch back and forth. And the linear did sound, again, a little bit more close in and claustrophobic to me initially, but as I listened, it ended up being fine. And all of the holography and spatial presentation are there, and again, arguably better than what the originals can do. So there are some trade-offs there, right? And you just have to make the determination as to whether or not they are worth it to you. But if you find yourself in the crowd that you think the HiFiMan house sound and like the HE400se and the Edition XS are no different here, that they are just a little too sucked out in the mids, there's not enough vocal presence or weight to the tone through the mids, and that hurts timbre for you, then I think that these mods here really address that issue in particular with a little bit smoother treble too, which kind of brings that sibilance and all of that down with it as well. Okay, so those are all interesting things to consider. Now we'll get into like where I did a lot of comparison to the originals here on this, but I also want to like compare these to like other models in HiFiMan's line and maybe some other headphones generally, and where they fit in here, where these mods fit in the market. And to do that, I'm going to switch up the vantage point here, and so let's go ahead and do a quasi overhead view and get that done. All right, in my sound discussion here, I already did a lot of comparison between the original units here with the mods, so I'm going to leave that there. What I want to do is talk about where the mods stack up with some of HiFiMan's other models, and I have a few around yet. I may not show every single one, but I've got a couple that I can bring in here to talk about. So the first one would be the currently about $420 US Ananda Nano. All right, and you can see it's like in the egg-shaped line and all of that. And you know, custom cans, it would be fun to hear what you can do with this one as well there. And like you already have a better headband to start with on that. Anyway, if you're talking about the original units, unmodded units, the Ananda Nano to me is clearly superior to both the 400se and the Edition XS. But with the mods, things definitely change. With the mods, I actually would prefer both of these in terms of technical performance to the Ananda Nano. Now, the one exception to that is the thing that I talked about in the sound section, and that is the mid-range timbre is just too much mid-range presence for me on the mods. The 2K range comes forward too much. Everything sounds a little bit shallow, shouty, honky, hollow to me. So for me, it wrecks the timbre that I appreciate HiFiMan's mid-range timbre, but that's it, right? Like in terms of all of the other technicalities, the resolution, the detail retrieval, the holography, and all of that, they are steps up. Both of these are steps up from the Ananda Nano. There we go. All right. With one exception, the Ananda Nano is among HiFiMan's slammiest headphone in its line, okay? It's not going to catch the HE6. The Susvara actually does slam quite a bit when you're willing to spend buku bucks on an amplifier for it. But in terms of for the everyman, this is one of the slammiest headphones in their line. And so the one thing that it does that these two don't do as well is the bass extension, sub-bass presence, and then the slam. This one is still a little bit better there, and then just the overall dynamic presentation to it. It's a little snappier and just a little bit quicker sounding on the attack and that sort of thing. But again, the resolution, the holography, the detail retrieval, all of that better on these two. These two are more even and smooth in the treble response, so that HiFiMan peakiness that some talk about that particularly plagues their cheaper models is smoothed out on these, and so they are less fatiguing than the Nano is too. I almost called it the Ananda, whatever. I'm getting all tongue twisted here. Doesn't matter, okay? But the fact that particularly the HE400se, I think in terms of all-around technicalities, at least challenges, if not slightly surpasses, the Ananda Nano here talks to the value that this offers. So if we zoom in for a moment on just the 400se mod, I think it's better overall performing than the Sundara, at least the open version. I think it's slightly better overall performing than the Ananda Nano and all of that. So it's just going to be a question of like, do the timbral changes work for you or do they not? And do you miss the slightly reduced dynamics in the presentation as over the original and over some of the other HiFiMans in there? Those are going to be the choices that you need to answer, or the questions you need to answer for yourself. Now, compared to other headphones that are out there, let's just talk about like the Beyerdynamic DT880 600 ohm and the Sennheiser HD6XX or HD650 for a little bit. And I say 6XX because that's like 220-ish US dollars, which is getting closer to the price of this with the mod. Would I take this over either of those? Personally, no, because of the mid-range tonality to my ear. But in terms of overall technicalities, it's a tough question. Now, this is not as strong as the DT880 and the HD6XX are at their own strengths, right? This is not as good in treble timbre as the DT880 is when the DT880 is matched with a good amplifier that can properly handle it. The treble on that DT880 is just astounding in that way, but the soundstage on this comes pretty close to that DT880. Okay, the detail retrieval and the resolution are probably just as good, if not just a smidge better. And this one has more presence and impact in the bass and all of that, which is where the DT880 sometimes needs a little bit of help. The HD6XX has better mid-range tone and timbre to it than this one, but the soundstage here, the imaging, the separation, the spatial presentation generally, much better than what the HD6XX is presenting and so forth. The other thing about the HD6XX and the DT880 is they are very high in impedance. That doesn't always play well with other amps. This one is middling. It's not high in impedance, but like it will work on amps that can't do that high impedance load as well there too. So I don't know that I prefer this one over those other two, but I can definitely would not shame anyone for making the decision to buy this modded version over either of those German legends either. Okay, zooming in then a little bit on the Edition XS mod, and again I have already compared it to its original there, so let's talk again here with the Nano. The performance gap, the all-around technical package performance gap that the XS mod gives you over the Ananda Nano is, in my opinion, quite substantial, where this one is pretty markedly superior to the Nano, again accepting that for me and my mid-range sensitivity, that mid-range tone and timbre issue. These again are shallow, I keep getting my words confixed. I just got done teaching at college today. I've been talking all day and you can tell my tongue is all tied up. Okay, these are a little bit more shouty, honky, hollow than these are still, to a point that I don't like. But again, the accuracy of the spatial presentation, the detail retrieval, the resolution, okay, noticeably superior here than they are with the Nano. All right, again, the Nano is going to be more impactful in the bass and a little bit more dynamic in its presentation overall. That's just one of the trade-offs, but that gap is much smaller than this one's advantages in detail retrieval, resolution, spatial accuracy, etc. over the Nano. All right. Somewhere I think Jason of Custom Cans told me he thought that they got this one pretty close to the Aria. Well, here is an Aria. This is the Aria Organic. They may have caught, the XS mod may have caught like the original Aria or the V2 or maybe even the Stealth Magnet version, but it hasn't quite caught the Organic all around, okay? So the Organic is still like the more evenly tuned, although I will say that the treble on this one, the XS mod, may yet be a little bit smoother than it is on the Aria Organic, but it's not by a lot, okay? The spatial presence, so the Aria Organic is a small technical improvement over all the technicalities like resolution, detail retrieval, tone and timbre, spatial presentation, all of that kind of stuff over the XS mod. And so you add up a bunch of little advantages and it just becomes a much, a better headphone overall. Also, this one, the Aria Organic, brings the dynamics, the bass impact, but then also the quickness and the snappiness through like snare drums and cymbal crashes and all of that kind of stuff. That is a bit of a trade-off here that you get with the XS mod over the HiFiMan house sound. But the gap here is not huge. Okay, it really is not huge. I still think the Aria Organic is a better headphone, but the XS mod here is definitely the better value. That to me seems pretty clear. So these four then, if I can fit them all on my table here, I would basically rank them in terms of like technical excellence. Thusly, Nano is the least technical, shockingly, then the HE400se mod, then a bit of a gap, then the Edition XS mod, and then the Aria Organic here. And the only thing that kills me with these guys here on that one is just that mid-range timbre issue that I talked about. I know I'm beating a dead horse on that. It's just too much for me, but it may be just fine for you. Okay. There are a ton of other headphones that are around $400 in price that I just can't get to do all of the comparisons here, and I haven't even heard all of them either. But just trust me when I say that this is an excellent headphone for the money as well, that at around $400 US for this, just slightly more, again, really excellent value here. All right, I think we can go ahead and wrap this up. So my bottom line take on these mods is that the head straps here are kind of a must. Like, I would get those for the additional comfort. They really help. And that the mods, the super grills definitely don't do nothing. They do some stuff in there, and there are trade-offs to the sound. For me, I probably wouldn't buy one or own one just because the mid-range just comes too far forward for me. It sounds too shouty, honky, hollow in the timbre for me. But that's really my only complaint. I guess I could quibble with, I like a more dynamic, energetic, lively sound. And one of the trade-offs they made here is that the dynamics recede just a little bit in comparison to the original units here too. Not badly, but just a little bit in there. So those would be my quibbles and my complaints, but it's mostly that mid-range tone. It's just too much for me. But my ears are sensitive in there. Well, they're either overly sensitive or I am just too sensitive or too intolerant of shouty, honky, mid-range timbre kind of thing, because it doesn't sound real to me. And that to me is the biggest issue with these headphones. For these ears, I am probably a bit of an outlier in my sensitivity there, though. I don't think that most people will find the mid-range forwardness on this objectionable. And if you're one of those people that you think that things like the HiFiMan house sound or the Sennheiser HE400se series sound is just too sucked out around two killers, too much of a recess there, this fills those in nicely. And I think these like bring the HiFiMan house sound, which has a lot of strengths to it, okay, to that audience that prefers a little bit more presence through that mid-range area there. So if that's you, go ahead and look into these. And again, the value here is really high, as I mentioned there with the comparisons. Like, you get a lot of headphone performance for the money, and I do mean a lot here. So there is a lot to be said for that too. So if you like the sound that I described, and here are some high value options for you to look into. All right, I'm Wave Theory. Thanks to Jason, at Custom Cans for sending these over. I enjoyed listening to them and getting to know them. I think you did quite well with these, and even though my tonal preferences weren't completely hit, I can't expect that all the time. I do think you scratched that itch for a great many people though. All right, so thanks to all of you for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe, comment, check out my PayPal, my Patreon. Generally do those things you do to support YouTube channels, and as always, enjoy the music.